assessments in order to define some of the growth for the school facility. One of the problems that
This is Bob,
makes
Neighbors.
schools different in terms of the impact fees and assessment is that everything's subject to the education clause, which is a uniform system of free public schools. So that permeates everything we try to do with schools, and you wouldn't have that same issue on special assessments in other contexts. The other thing that's different about schools is that, which has been recognized by the courts in the impact fee analysis, is that you can't say that any one house will create a need. It's the aggregation of new houses over a planning period where there'll be so many students created. Normally when you do a special assessment, for example, whether it's solid waste or whether it's capital assessments or roads, you assess a property, individual property receives a direct benefit. Where the school impact fee is collected from a house, even though theoretically that house may never have children, has the potential to have children. So you look at the impact fee based upon the potential of schools during the planning period. And because of that, one of the things that we've always had trouble with is the benefit assessment. The general law allows you to do an assessment, for example, for a particular subdivision. I'm sorry, assessment. There's the statute on benefit assessment. If you do it on a subdivision by subdivision basis, you run the risk of creating a user fee. You run the risk of making a particular subdivision pay more than another subdivision because the school that's built to serve that subdivision isn't limited to just kids generating that subdivision. Other kids potentially can go there too. So you have a certain classification of people that pay an assessment and others do not to get the same privilege in terms of the use of the facility. So that's what the court very well may say is a user fee that violates the free public schools. Now, one thing that we've actually talked with several governments about that you could do an assessment, and it depends upon whether the county commission would want to do that. And that is, you don't do it on a subdivision by subdivision basis. You have a program where you Moses didn't come off the mountain and say you have to collect that impact fee and CO or building permit. You can collect it at any time during the land approval process in which the vested right to build occurs. So one of the concepts that's been thrown out for a number of years is why not take the impact fee and, if you will, capitalize it and have it come due at an earlier stage of the land development process for the large development. So everybody is treated the same. There's no tuition concept. And so what you would do is you would say, currently, because I understand it under your land development regulations, you collect half of the impact fee at plan approval and another half at building permit and invading with the CO. What this would require you to do would be to say, as to the school impact fee, we're going to collect that, say, since it's residential, say subdivision approval, site plan approval, earlier in the process, collect that, place it on the tax bill incrementally over a period of years, plus interest, plus cost of collection. Then everybody's treated the same because the person is not a new development in terms of a large subdivision, an individual person who pulls the building permit. They would pay the total fee and you give a credit for those who did the assessment. Say they had paid, the lot had paid 5 years, and then the actual building permit was pulled, they would get 5 years credit on the assessment. So you could do that. The question you have to ask yourself is whether or not that creates a complexity in terms of administration that makes it worthwhile, and whether or not you really build that many schools faster. You wouldn't need impact fees generally if all developments were large. Really, the purpose of impact fees generally is to make sure that the single developer pays their fair share. And the way you would do that, and what I was talking about, that assessment program, they would pay building permit or CO, that you would try to capture early on an incremental basis the capitalized cost of the impact fee for the large development when they got development approval. That makes sense? That, in our view, that's the only, that's the, in terms terms of our view of the law, that's the only really way you can use assessment. The legal test on assessment is it a service provides a logical relationship, capital facility provides a logical relationship with property. On impact fee, the first prong is there's a rational nexus between the need for capital improvements to the property, and the question is whether those standards are basically the same. We feel like they could be, that you can collect the impact fee earlier and do an assessment before we want to do that as a matter of policy.
But what would you do about you're referring then just to the big project?
Yeah, but new projects that came along where, you're going to have a lot of people that pay impact fees and they just pull a single building permit on lots.
And you would continue to do that?
You continue to collect that and seal a building permit, but then when a developer came in at the time of, say subdivision, I don't know when you do it now, subdivision, construction, at the time of the planning, ordinance could be drafted to say, you have the option of paying it now, or you pay it incrementally as an assessment, say over 10 or 15 years. And then what you have to make a policy decision is whether or not you have the remaining balance come due at the time of building permit. In other words, if they pay half of it, half would come due. The development community would like to see have that continue past building permit, just have that assessment against land so they never have to absorb that cost. That's the way CEDs work generally. But our experience has been the counties that look at these are concerned because the homeowner who buys it wouldn't understand what is this charge. Well, this is the charge the county commission imposes the nature of assessment. So probably the better model is, if you did this, is to say for the new development is that the impact fee comes due earlier in the land development process. But once the building, whatever collection mechanism you have with the building permit or CO, at that point the remaining balance comes due and can be embedded in the price of the house.
Okay, could you set a limit though on subdivisions and say, okay, any subdivision over 30 lots would be required to pay their amount up, a larger amount up front? Like right now we require 50% at plat, and it's applicable to any size plat.
Well, yeah, that's a part of your own rule. I know of no constitutional restriction on that. The question is whether you're really going to get enough. It will be an administrative problem, but you've got to do an annual roll each year. You've got to take count of how many have been prepaid, what's the main balance. So it does create somewhat of a administrative complex. So certainly you could distinguish between sizes and so on. And then you also have multifamily that pay impact fee too. And you might want to pick the site plan approval or some other points of that. So that's a possibility, and I think that's, in reading the minutes that I read of the Frank to me, I think that's generally the concept that people were talking about.
More back to what you said. I don't know where that number would be, is it 100 houses, is it 50 houses, is it 1,000? That would actually benefit the school system by getting that money ahead of time. Is it 50 houses, but you get the money ahead of time, does that really benefit the overall problem the school system has now in regard to building more seats?
It just seems logically that obviously the larger the project, it creates a greater potential. Yeah, you can get your students faster, and therefore getting that money up front allows you then to move forward with your capital improvements. But as I recall from our last discussion, the impact fee itself, that fee, would have to be uniform. Whether it was a single family house in varies versus 1,000-unit subdivisions in Claremont, the fee itself would have to be the same.
Well, I mean, it would be, that's another issue, but I think generally, I don't know if anybody that does an impact fee less than uniform. In your study, certainly contemplates that. If you wanted to do something different than that, it would take a much more detailed analysis than you've done yet on current projection of growth. But the assessment concept I'm talking about is simply a mechanism to allow for earlier collection with the policy expectation might be able to build schools quicker, so they would be available at the time the kids get there. The universal problem is that whether it's building permit or CEO, at that point, the school's already overcrowded, they need schools, so that's a problem. So the question is whether there's a reasonable solution to that problem, and the only one that we've thought in our office that we've been able to knock around is this idea, which is what you're doing now, except more. And frankly, this is an idea that had more traction for lease purchase financing. You got to be so proud because lease purchase now allows you may pay a little bit more interest, it allows you to put more brick and mortar on the ground, probably quicker than this assessment program would. So this is everybody that calls for the inadequacy of state funding, everybody's searching for these types of things, but you just got to be careful. You don't want to do anything that would jeopardize the structure of your impact fee or school. So,
not to put you on the spot, but I do that, Gary. You're the one that looks at our numbers as to when we need to come up with a new school in a different area. Is there a number that triggers in your head that we're going to have to build a school over here? I know you do it by concurrency, but is it a 500 unit development or 1,000 unit or?
Well, I was sitting here thinking about that, hoping I wasn't going to be asked that question. But realizing that if the multiplier is about 0.4 something, and about half of that is elementary, so
right.
Just using 0.2. When you talk about 1,000, I quickly did the math. Okay, that would be 200 elementary school students, which is certainly an impact. And I thought, okay, well maybe that magic number is 1,000. And of course, then I thought, wow, then how many developments would come in with 999 homes? So I don't know what that number. I don't know, I even say de minimis, but de minimis in terms of this concept of collecting upfront should be. But certainly that thought process of keeping in mind the multiplier, and once again, just about that 0.2 and thinking about it in those terms. So if the 1,000 units single family would be about 200 elementary school students, and 500 would be half of that, so the 100. That would be about 5 elementary regular ed students, about 5 classrooms. So that would be a good addition to a school. I mean, we've done that model before. We've built a school with an enhanced core or a large core where a 5 or 10 classroom addition could be stuck on. So it's maybe something even as small as 5 minutes. So, I don't know.
I think the board has looked at that second point before and where we need to be, and I believe that Mr. Fitz has given a good statement when he talked about the percentage equating to the proportion of the child at home. It is an issue to try to figure it out. But our class size for schools are over 700. So, and in elementary, yes.
I'm a little bit confused. We brought you on board, I guess, to bring disclaimer that comes after a drug commercial or something. It can cause cancer. But I'm confused about why we can't put the MSBU in place, in simple terms.
you mean for a subdivision?
For a countywide MSBU, that would be at the full vetted amount. Why, specifically, why can't we do that?
Well, you wouldn't know if what you're saying is let's assess like you do solid waste, for example. Is that what you're saying, countywide for school?
Countywide, it'd be an education district under the guise of the MSBU. Why can we not do that?
Well, because you really wouldn't know which property is going to receive the benefit. I mean, because in your land use code, there's a lot of classification, a lot of properties in full single-family permits. So you really wouldn't know. It's not like a solid waste assessment, for example, Camden County line, they assess all improved property based on solid waste. You wouldn't know, whether or not, it would be, if you had someone on a piece of agricultural land or small, they could build a home there too. I mean, so they could be subject to them. It's just not practical to do that.
I don't understand why it's not practical.
Hmm?
I do not understand why it is not practical.
Well, I've done a lot of assessment programs, and I just even, if you think in terms of a map of the county and all the land use, first place you have to do it in the cities too. So you have to get permission from the cities to do assessment. That's the process. If you think about it, how would you normally on assessment, you come up with a capital program that you've done in terms of how many schools are needed, and then you start doing a benefit unit, each single family, and then you do multiples of that in terms of multi-family. It'd be hard to identify. Once you do that, then it's got to be a portion of the property. It'd be hard to say which of the parcels that are going to need these schools. It'd be hard to do that because there's so many classifications that you can build a single family home and potentially need the school, and it would be paying the assessment. Or if they would, it would be the benefit would be so remote in the future that it would be hard to justify.
And you're saying you would then get challenged on it.
Hmm?
I mean, that's the potential, that you get challenged.
Yeah, but
legally.
the problem you have with the assessment, it's got to be, the improvement has to be provided within a reasonable time of the assessment getting paid. You could have, and it just doesn't lend itself to that's why the legislature went to this idea, which we don't think it will fall out, of doing just an assessment district for each subdivision. There you run into a different problem. You could do that, because you could determine for a particular subdivision how many stations are needed and what's needed in a particular subdivision. The problem there is that you create a user fee concept with that assessment, because there would be children who lived in homes that didn't pay the assessment using the same school. Schools are more fluid than within a particular subdivision. You might have a huge subdivision that you can do something like that. Generally, the way large subdivisions do, they usually give a school site or they give a contribution where they get credit against the impact fee.
Madam Chair. Before my time, we had impact fees of $1,000, right? Then you went to 25, then you went to 94. Was there ever a discussion about the person that paid the 94? Was we worried about the person that paid the 1,000? But we seem to be awfully concerned about living in a house that has an assessment versus one. Did y'all have a conversation in the same neighborhood that at one time it was 1,000 and 2,500 and 9,000?
I've heard it from people. I've heard people say that they don't
Did
think
they
it's
not
fair,
buy?
that they, well, then, I think that what happens over time in real estate is that your appraisals just kind of work themselves out over time, as opposed to somebody having a fee that they're actually paying as a lien on their property, so I think it just kind of works itself out.
And if I can speak to it, what we did was look at a single family versus a multifamily, and we had different fees. We have that now, and when I heard before that we would have a fee for all, it's always been separate with the single family versus the multifamily.
Madam Chair. The commission, correct me if I'm wrong on this, but that was a very good question, looking at it from all angles. But I seem to recollect that we have, in some instances, allowed the impact fee to be transferred from one property to another. Is that right? Yeah, that had been prepaid. Sandy, is that correct?
Well, in order to meet the rules of
I don't think we have
concurrence.
none.
Does that address your question, Mr. Mathias?
I sort of believe that Mr. Neighbors is leading up to the situation of the developer would be pursuing an assessment
to be, the assessment has to be imposed by the Board of County Commissioners.
Yes, sir, but I mean the first request for an assessment.
Yeah, what you would do is, if the impact would come due earlier in the process, and you really give the developer the option, you can either pay it now or you can pay it in
Right,
installments.
okay, and then,
And the point would be, to your point, is that, if you did that kind of program, when actually the ultimate building permit was pulled or the CO was issued, it would be whatever fees that existed at that time, would be what they would pay, and they would just get a credit for the installments paid under an old fee, for example. And the fact that fees change over time really doesn't affect the analysis, because at the time the fee was imposed, it was done uniform, just with a different rate.
and the process of getting to that fee was approved by the county commission at the time.
I have a question on the board.
We have allowed impact fee credits to be given, particularly for transportation in the past, and allowed them to be transferred. And I think we're also allowed, after the suspension for even educational impact fees, to be moved into a bank, let's call it, because we didn't want to penalize somebody who had prepaid and now there was no fee. So if they built a home, they were able to take the fee and put it into the bank and use it at a later time, should fees be able to come back. Does that answer your question? And this is, if I ask one other point, courts have struck down assessments for things like police services, general transportation, and so forth, because they end up doing an analogy that they're either user fees or taxes, and they're not authorized by law. So you have to be able to have a specific tie between an assessment and a particular piece of property in order for the assessment to be upheld. And in general education, if you did it countywide, that's usually where you would fail. But you can't make that tie, as Mr. Havers was saying, between the particular lot and the fee. It's a lot easier to say on fire or where you can do it, but even in fire, the courts have struck down the EMS portion of fire, so we're not able to assess for ambulance and paramedic type services, only for the actual fire protection that improves the property itself.
So I think that when we've been talking earlier about the idea of spreading out a payment over time, we were referencing an impact fee, and you're actually letting them take the impact fee and spread it out over time, because we don't have the legal authority, or at least the way that Sandy just explained it, to actually do a tax, because we can't impose a tax unless it's.
Taxes have to be authorized by general law.
So just for clarification, and again, the burden of trying to do an assessment countywide is going to be trying to show that direct benefit to the actual.
I just think at least we have there's a growth management regulatory, impact fees are regulatory. And at the time when you're actually adding new units to a growth study, you can justify the fee. But you would never know, if you looked at all the different ownerships in the county, including the city, you would not know whether this particular single-family lot in downtown Memphis was full of building permit or multi-family with any reasonable expectation. Someone who's come in with a new subdivision, with a reasonable expectation, they will use it within a reasonable time frame that allows the assessment rather than a partial tax.
All right, so to recap on the idea of using it on a per subdivision basis, you would essentially require the impact, the fee itself to be paid at an earlier point in the development process, and as the developer at that point could then ask to spread it out by putting the assessment in place just on those lots, and then you could trigger the final payment due at the time that, say, the CO was issued on an individual house.
And that doesn't convert it as user fee, it's just a accommodation of a method of payment, as opposed to, if you didn't have a comprehensive program like that, and you attempted to assess an individual subdivision, then that assessment, only those people would pay. And if you convert it into a user fee, because there's no control that they would use as schools.
I'll talk to Mr. Mathias, if comfortable. Mr. Mathias, do you have other questions?
Well, the only thing I want to ask, all due respect, but your opinion is from your perspectives, right? another group that they have a different opinion. So how would we understand, very honestly, and again, yours seems to come from a really conservative, or this one might be a more liberal interpretation, but is this another thing where, because we just have the Attorney General weigh in on another issue, couldn't she weigh in on this so that we have their opinion?
Countywide assessment.
On a countywide assessment. Y'all can request that, right?
We could, someone, I'm not seeing this as a gray area, but.
But, well, I mean, if nothing else, with educated people, we didn't use it. But if we, well, it'd be nice enough we could.
And I think the Lake County School Board is looking for something that is practical, that we can go by Mr. Neighbors. We want to do the right thing for the community, and I'm also really comfortable, because this is a big step. It is a big step for our county and the progress. Just quality of life in Lake County can be impacted if we do this wrong. So, I hear what you're saying, Mr. Messiah.
I think I can probably answer that. The problem with the Attorney General is that she is just another lawyer. And when she agrees with you,
I don't think I want that.
well, I don't know. That's a very common way that we refer to it. So when we agree with her, she's the highest lawyer in the land. And when we disagree with her, she's just another lawyer. But the problem is her opinion gives us no weight in court. So when a law firm, a class action law firm sues us, and waits 4 years until after we were to implement this assessment, and then they sue us, then there's a huge risk. And if we were talking, I don't know, if we were talking $10,000, say for new construction, we'd be talking millions of dollars a year. So at the end of 4 years, we'd be facing maybe $100 million. There'd be no resources to be able to pay that money back. So the problem on relying on her opinion on something like this is there's no guarantee that the judge is going to agree. And that's a huge risk that someone, whether it be the county commission or the school board, would have to undertake that risk in order to do that.
But, and I think that's just a good segue into the question of the Attorney General opinion that we did receive on the question that we did
But
ask.
it's fine.
Okay.
The other problem is that, in the current opinion, the general thing, will always qualify our opinion by saying, as long as it meets the dual rational nexus status, or as long as it's consistent with the state education clause. That'd give you a lot of juice. I mean, that's pretty much, that's the problem, coming up with something that is, enforced to the standard.
Well, we'll come back to that opinion.
Just perhaps a second, I'll end this with a quick comment. And that is, if we relied on attorneys our whole life, we would have moved, because there's risk at every turn. And at the end of the day, we have to use our best judgment, and that's getting information from everyone. And so if we have two opinions that we can't do it, I have one right now that says we can. It would be nice just to be able to weigh the risk, you know what I'm saying? And that for me, what I'm trying to do is build a mechanism for future growth that pays for itself and it doesn't break our construction industry. That's all. Yeah.
And congratulations, Mr. Neighbors, you're wonderful. And Mr. Messiah is always thinking and plotting the better way. And so I just want to share that with you. I want you to feel good about his opportunities.
We have a little experience with special assessments that was on the video. It can get into some pretty significant impact legally. So I think it's prudent to get several opinions on that particular mechanism before making a final decision. But on the Attorney General opinion that we did get, if we could talk about that while you're here.
Well, what are we going to talk about? I could have written that. I mean, seriously, that is basic law that we can talk about with our impact fees forever. The cases she cited, we all know, it's the law of government at all. I mean, I don't know how that helps the conversation today.
Well, I think that it's a different question than the countywide section.
Right, absolutely.
It's a completely completely separate question. And we happen to have two competing opinions in the room right here.
On
So,
special.
on
But
the.
hers didn't address the special assessment.
No, that's what I wanted to talk about, I wanted to talk about the dual, impact fee district. From, that was the issue that I wanted to
Can
talk
I
about
ask a
Mr.
question?
Nation here.
Do we want to talk about that before we know whether the school board has a recommendation for that?
Well, I just felt like with Mr. Neighbors being an
I just
expert
asked
in
a
the
question.
field.
I don't object to the discussion, but I'm just saying that, you know, it might relate to my pay attention level if the school board actually wants to do that.
You're talking about the differential level.
Okay,
Dr. Howard?
The board agreed to have this done.
Yes,
I
okay.
specifically asked for it, and the board agreed, so there were lots of circumstances from the board that we were interested in seeing how it would work.
Well, I actually thought that there was a motion that failed at the school board level that would have called for impact fees in one section of the county, but not the other.
And the discussion was because we did not have the AD report yet.
And that was the reason.
That was one of the stated reasons that we did not have the AD.
I can read the minutes for you.
I read them.
so I think there's definitely interest on the part of the school board,
It was timely that our intentions as well. We've not had a meeting. I would like to hear Mr. Neighbors' opinion on what was presented, but I don't think our board today, because this is not a special meeting, can make any kind of definitive statement. We have to go back into session, and I hate to say that, but there's just no way to do it in a regular workshop for the Lake County School Board. We have to be in special session.
we'll go back to that on next steps.
I'm sorry, that is a next step. Okay.
Well, let's just.
Madam Chair, can I clarify the reason I said what I did? Because the last paragraph says, yeah, it'll work as long as it satisfies the dual rational nexus.
That's all begging the question, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, we gotta force that, we do that. So
Well, and that's kind of where we wanted to hear from the experts that have varying opinions on it. Does it or does it not? What could something be done that could meet that rational nexus and meet constitutional requirements? And that's what I think everybody wants to hear from the experts. Or do they think it could happen?
Well, there's no case on point on this issue, whether or not you could have an impact fee that's imposed less than district-wide. The whole concept of schools is that they're uniform within school districts. The original case, the St. Johns County case, when they originally drafted the ordinance, a lot of conservative lawyers were concerned with whether or not Washington County could impose a fee on behalf of schools without county purpose, whether or not, you could have an impact fee because each house generated just an aggregate of percentage assumption of new student station. But the original ordinance in St. Johns County when it was first drafted did two things, which Frank the General talks about. One is it applied only in the unincorporated area. So the fee would only apply in the unincorporated area. And the court said that was invalid because it failed the second prong of the dual rational nexus test. Mouthful. What that means is an impact fee on the first prong has to not be greater than the need created by the development. The second prong is you have to use it for the purpose for which it was imposed. And the problem is when you impose it in an unincorporated area only, you would use the fee to build schools potentially which no one paid the fee. It would all be used to pay to serve the need created by the fee payers. They have it invalid. I represented the Florida School Board Association and others. We filed a motion for rehearing and clarification, and they changed the opinion to say it was invalid until such time that it was imposed countywide. So we didn't want to lose all the other concepts. And so one of the problems if you have a fee assessment countywide, you run a risk that the courts would say that the proceeds, the impact fee is satisfying a need for it's beyond the people that pay the fee, even though it might be relatively minor. The other problem with it is that, general thoughts about this, is that the original impact fee ordinance had, which is traditional impact fees, you could come in with a study and show you're different, therefore you can pay a different fee. And the court held that that would turn it into a user fee, that you could come in and some people didn't pay the fee because the ordinance, the expert had said that they didn't have children, or didn't expect to have children. It created, it wasn't a uniform fee in the sense it created a user fee. The court talked about, and there were subsequent cases in which the court upheld exemptions of subdivisions, and that's what the Attorney General focused on. In other words, if you have a subdivision that's deed restricted to seniors or people over a certain age, or prohibited children living in the subdivision under federal guidelines, then you don't have to pay the fee there, but it doesn't create the need for schools under the first prong. So one of the problems of trying to do something less than school system-wide is you've got to make sure that you meet this, particularly the second prong of the test. And my experience has been, the schools are fluid. You have students go to various schools in various places. They're not really always geographically specific. So you would have potentially have people paying the fee, and other people would be using schools to be paid for, not having paid for the fee. So that would violate the first prong. And there is a potentially you could perhaps do a study area on concurrency. If you had some concurrency service areas where based on the level of services you adopted, so there was capacity for all the schools in that concurrency service area, you could calculate a different fee for maybe that concurrency service area as opposed to the one which had a great deficiency in terms of student station. You might be able to do something like that, but that would have to be very surgically done. So you've got to be constantly aware that you can't violate this second prong of the test. You can't charge someone a need for a school facility that goes to benefit someone who didn't pay the fee.
So if you looked countywide and saw that our deficiencies were all in South Lake County, draw a line across the county and everything south is where we were experiencing deficiencies, that could potentially justify.
You'd have to do a study, do a planning horizon, and kind of make some projections. There would probably be some growth even in that part of the county that might be lesser than another part of the county. You could theoretically come up with different to that way, but the justification for the fee, the uniform fee, which is in your discretion, is in those areas that have capacity, that capacity is placed there, so they're really consuming capacity that someone else paid for, so that's why you can justify doing the uniform fee, and while we were successful for it back in the beginning. But theoretically, you do that, but the difficulty, as I understand it, I think Randy Young, MC Young, did your study, and I'm very familiar with the study, is that he doesn't do it that way. None of them do it that way. They basically calculate a per student station cost. They don't go into the concurrency model and say, you know, that this fee ought to be this, that it could be less because there's capacity in this area. And I think the reason they don't, they're more expert than I is because, again, whether it's exceptional children or whatever it is, the children are fluid along the uniform system, so it's hard to, so unless the fee is paid somewhere, it's hard to say that those students stay within that area. And that's why the Attorney General's opinion, with all due respect, in that helpful, because she said you can do it as long as it meets the dual rational basis test and the state education law.
Going back to what Jimmy was saying, and we did have our meeting, and one motion that I had made was for 50% of the current impact fee study. But I also put in there that there were other things that we needed to look at. Todd's motion was 50% for just South Lake, and I questioned the legality of it to hear what Mr. Neighbors had to say, because I didn't feel, I thought it was dividing the county again, and you go back and listen to it. Yes, it's growing more in the south end of the county, and I think it's great that Todd wants to go ahead and do it down there, but we already have inequities in some of the schools because of the fact it grows in one area and it doesn't grow in areas we're used to.
You gotta-
And I think you should have one complete fee for the entire county. I do want to hear what he said, so maybe he'll go, because that's what he said.
Madam Chairman? May I dovetail on that? I wondered if we are, Chairman Fisher, if I asked just a valid question.
Well, I honestly believe that that's up to Dr. Moxley, but
Dr.
Dr.
Moxley, may I
has
ask?
a lot here.
Hey, Carol, how are you? You miss me?
We're giving you a player to be named later.
Remember, Dr. Moxley is very, very cool.
Okay, I recall the specific number of 67%, and I want to dovetail on what Ms. Stuyvesant said. I recall at one point in time that of our capital money, we had took 67% in one area in the county, and that's where the need was. That's where the need was, and that was South Lake County. My question is, do you know just off the top of your head the percentage? I mean, could you give me like a historical perspective before impact fees were waived? What percent of money was collected on impact fees, and what percentage was spent just down in one area of the county? Do you have any idea?
We've got the listing of the debt service information that was provided. It shows where the schools obviously have been built, and we go in order. Obviously, the most recent ones have been in South County. Then you look at Sorrento Elementary. Obviously, we haven't had a whole lot in the very north end, either northeast or northwest. The road is in the Claremont area. Our rebuild has been down there. So I don't.
Well, I guess.
I don't know that I can answer that question with a percentage.
What I'm trying to get an answer to is to suggest that maybe there's unintended consequences of doing it by just one area of the county. That's what I'm
So you
trying to.
won't generate enough money to build schools in South Lake if you don't collect it anymore?
Well, that was the question I was trying to raise, because, you know, we used to get a lot of criticism from people in South Lake that you weren't spending enough, and we'd get criticism from everyone else that you're spending all your money in South Lake. So I think that there can be, you know, some unintended consequences when you start doing it in one area of the county, you know, rather than the entire county. And I mean, I'm not opposed to the discussion. You know, I appreciate the fact that Dr. Howard is concerned about the higher growth down in South Lake County. But then at the same time, I read that there's other needs at Eustis Elementary School and wherever else there may be on this end of the county. But you might lose some flexibility if you only impose an impact fee in one area of the county. I guess that's sort of what I'm saying.
I want to say this, that I think that this board struggled when Mr. Connor was seated on the board to have seats available for a growth rate that was the third highest in the United States at the time. We're not facing that today. We are facing schools that need attention, and this board has been in a position to look at the schools that needed renovation and has supported that. I don't want to do anything that's detrimental to any particular area, but at the time that we dedicated dollars for South Lake, it was a phenomenal growth. Dr. Howard is saying there's growth again. I'm not too for sure that won't happen everywhere with all the subdivisions that we have platted. once our economy gets strong, but I do not see that this economy is that strong today, nor do I read in the newspapers that it is that strong here in Lake County, and that is my concern. Dr. Howard.
And I'll touch on a few things. The impact fee study gives us our greatest need. So we know where the limit is, which is 10295. When we go to our other side of the nexus, that it's used for an area of need, we're fortunate because of the length of Lake County and our geography that it's fairly easy to follow that need across with our existing boundaries for South Lake High School and Lake Mineola High School. There's a boundary that goes that because of the geography, students aren't necessarily going to ebb and flow like they would in South Lake between those schools. So that is, and I understand the nexus portion. The only reason we can have this discussion is because of our geography, and I believe it's something that we do need to, we should at least look at it. The other way that this can be done is similar to what you guys have already done with transportation fee, is to set that level countywide, A level, and because the economy may be able to absorb more in the South End, do an additional for that one. So we can set it countywide and then do an additional for that specific area, because as Kelly said, I think our goal is to not hurt Lake County, not hurt Lake County residents, and not bring our construction to a halt. But we also need to be wary that we do have needs, we have real needs. Just as, Mr. Connor started standing in front of the Board of County Commission in 2002, and 2003, and 2004, this board is standing before you now telling you that in 3 years we have $0 in our capital fund. The fact of the matter is we don't have the money capacity that the school did back then. And when I say that we are looking at real needs and real detrimental impact to our school system, i.e. the only answer is dual sessions, we have to find a level that can do it. And the goal is, for me, is to find a way that we can best fund the needs that we have. We have a school down there that's $35 million. I've got to find a way to fund that school within the next 5 years. And that's just one school. And I know that Harry went and showed us $1 billion worth. I'm looking at how am I going to deal with this. With all of the schools that school, or that is going to impact, they already all have portables. This isn't we can move students here or there, we can jockey them around, we have all of this extra capacity. We don't have it. And we are looking at a school, or we start looking at alternative schedules. And I can tell you, as having family members who went through those alternative schedules years ago, they are uncomfortable. Parents do not like them. We will all be held hostage by parents as they are inundating us with, we should have done these things. And so there's I think we can meet our dual nexus. I think we should talk about it. Yes, it will take some language from you guys, but that is something that you guys have to look at. We're happy. I think, as a board member, I would be happy to make sure that you guys have the information from us, from our statistics, to ensure that we do not break the nexus of using that area of need. But that is something that we would have to supply that information. Because obviously you're not going to look at it and go, I know where your geography is, I know what your boundaries are, and how you like that.
Is that gauge rate and seven four corners the most pressing need right now?
If you look at it, Lost Lake is full, Windy Hill is full, Sawgrass Bay is full. There's a little bit of capacity at East Ridge Middle. Lake Mineola High School is full, and there's a little bit of capacity. So the two that I know off the top of my head that have capacity are East Ridge Middle and East Ridge High. And a lot of that East Ridge High is portables. You got to remember, we had more than 1,000 seats just in portables at East Ridge High. They call it Portable City, and a good portion of that is still there. So, this isn't, we're not saying we need more bricks and mortar. We're using portables. We're using every resource we have. The other one that we're looking at is Grassy Lake. Trying to be fiscally conservative, and a big conversation between this board, we ended up going with portables rather than doing a complete addition. That complete addition is not that far down the road either. And so that's another $2, $3, $4 million as opposed to 4.4. So these are all needs that we're looking at. We know that there is no capacity at those schools to absorb that impact.
And I think, it is best to hear from a person that is in the district, and I thank you very, very much. But it takes a board decision to move, and we can hear one board member's passion, but it is the whole board's decision, and it is the whole board's decision to present information.
You don't know? Well, no, I just wanted to support something you said earlier, though, about direction from your board, because I think that's what we were all looking for, to the extent that your board is wanting us to go in a particular direction.
You and I spoke. I looked at your agenda for today. This board needs to meet in a special session, an emergency session. But I'm not too for sure this board has everything still that it needs. And I've heard today a lot of questions with answers yet to come. So, but I am very willing, board members, if you'd like to have an emergency session on Monday. In fact, we have plenty of time not to even make it an emergency session, but to have a workshop session that is special to take a vote. And I would want Ms. Brandon as mayor, and that would be
Okay, understanding that on Tuesday, we hear our ordinance for a 1-year suspension. So if our board was to go in a different direction, we would have to cancel that public hearing, re-advertise, and all of that could be done if that was the direction that our board wanted to go. And we would have the 90-day requirement so that we could implement whatever decision is made if it's something that can be done in short order. Some of the things that we talked about today, obviously, is the concept of special session and all. These are things that might take quite a while to flesh out, and I think that there would be a concern that that's the kind of thing that you couldn't necessarily turn around in 140 days, whereas maybe other decisions, it could be implemented in relatively short order. But one thing to keep in mind, you said, Dr. Howard, that you would provide us information. I think that based on what I heard.
board will provide you.
Right, no, okay, the board, I didn't know the board, I understood it to be the board, but the point being that in order to, if we were to go in the direction of a dual district, for example, your idea of, say, a base fee, and then an additional fee on top of that for Southland County, that would require an actual study, and because we would have to go into the current study and a whole new procedure out to justify that. And then I think that since we're here, I just want to put it out on the table because if any of you all want to chime in, but I think we would have still concerns about the possibility of a challenge. So that I think that we would be looking for some indemnification and maybe an escrowing of the funds for a particular period of time for that district, just to give us that comfort level.
That would be on top of everything we read. Seemed like, yeah, you can do it. I mean, this being the first, that type of thing. That if you brought us 2 or 3 studies that said, yeah, we believe it's been met, it can work, I still think we would need some type of indemnification. And I don't know how that works. That you would be able to start collecting money and have to put it in a trust.
Well, see, a base fee, at least you're collecting your base, and you may not be using it right away anyway, because you need to accumulate it in order to take on these projects. So it may work hand in hand with what your needs actually, when they become to fruition. So that you could set that portion of it aside and have access to your base funds right away.
What do you come up with? I know you did 70% of South, and what did you do countywide?
13%.
That's 13%. Calculating.
Transportation impact fee.
Yeah.
Impact fee is about $2,100 for a traditional family household. You guys probably know better than I do. It's $2,600 for a 3 or 4 bedroom. And listening, because I've been where you guys are. I served on the school board many, many years ago, back when things were easy.
No, they weren't that easy.
No, I think that it's, anytime you try to establish a different fee in a different area, then you get into all kind of legalese and you have all kind of issues. I think Mr. Bible made a great point, is that we're in a very, very difficult situation trying to figure out our economy and where it's going to go and all the things that we have to do. And I say that with the idea that's why I recommended that we put in impact fees at the county level on a percentage basis, because we didn't want to hurt the economy, but on the other hand, we have huge needs, and just like you guys in the school business have, we have them, and one thing we do is transportation, and we're operating on maintaining our roads at about a 1960 level, but they've increased about 30 times that, and that eats up all the gas tax on that. So, from my perspective, from Tim Sullivan's perspective, as a county commission, what I would suggest is we're getting ready to make a major decision at the county commission about waiving fees or whatever. And I don't believe that in government you ever get what you want, because it is government, and we affect people's lives every day. And that's whether that's the home building industry, the guy that wants to build a house, or the attorney who's got to put all the stuff together to figure it out. I'm worried about special assessments, because that requires somebody to administrate it. And when you get into administration, we don't do it real good. I mean, not to take a look at my staff out there, but it just adds to the cost of doing that. So I think that from a point of view, you guys have huge needs, that I think there's a number in there that we can recommend, and similar to what we did in transportation impact fees, that says, hey, we need to start collecting this and having an impact today, because the schools aren't going to get better. When I was on the school board, we figured we needed one more high school in South Lake County, and now you've got 3 already, so I understand. So I believe that, and I don't want to speak for my fellow commissioners, that some kind of guidance from y'all saying, boy, this is what we need, and let's move forward, because I think the doc stands, and I think we've taken a difficult subject and tried to simplify it and use the principle of keep it simple, stupid, and it just doesn't apply here. But I believe that we need to do something. We need to try to support our school system, because that's probably one of the biggest effects of what we see on economic development, is that if we don't support our school system, then we're not going to get the kind of development that we want here and create a workforce which brings of it. So it's a chicken and egg contest. So I would like to see something back from you guys to say, hey, we could live with this, because there's a lot of this will change. I mean, when I was on the school board, I think it was $1,200 was the impact fee on single family home. Today it's $10,000. So that having been said, I'll be quiet. But I think we just have to make those tough decisions, and guidance back from you guys will help this board make a decision that we can support your.
I just to stress the timing for the South Lake District. For the transportation, we tied it to specific projects. It was a part of that. That's the rational nexus. And I know that's why I asked you about the school, the K through 8. That might be your rational nexus. But if we did, and I think the chair alluded to this, that it does take, you have to do one other study. And for transportation, it was fairly straightforward, and it still took like 2 or 3 months. So it's probably going to take you longer for what you want to do. So that's just me thinking about that.
My comment was kind of too, this is on the agenda for Tuesday because of the 90 days if we were going to do something. If we don't act Tuesday, what triggers? Sandy or Sherry, if you got that on top of your head, tell me.
I believe it's in January that we go back to 9,000.
Yes, that's correct.
Yeah.
We don't take action Tuesday,
Right.
correct?
Right.
We don't have a week or 2 in there, right?
Right. So we got a short time for window here. And, okay. Madam Chair, well,
Yeah, that's what I was referring to. I wanted to hear everything from them and then people.
No, but I'll take you some if you want me to.
No, I think you've done a lot of talking to.
You were going
I did
to.
talk.
Yeah.
Are we wrapping up? Is that what why you're asking this?
Well, we're now 50 minutes past 4 o'clock.
I was just gonna say, I wanted to thank the board member advice. I appreciate you talking about assessment. I appreciate you coming. Yeah, I know all of you, I was just saying, I appreciate the pressing questions. I do want to recognize,
Right,
you all,
got it.
this is, I know this is a special important issue, we've got our manager and council member that's here as well. I'm sure there's probably others in the audience, but,
All right, and we're gonna kick it back over to y'all, and but we have 3 speakers. Do you want to hear from them before you make your comments? Do you want to wait until after that?
I want to hear from it.
Okay, before you do that, can I throw one more thing into the mix for you to think about, and that is that no matter what you do, I think it's really important that we keep our cities in the fold as far as concurrency goes, because that may be your last, sort of stopgap there if we get into a lot of activity. And one of the things that I had thought might be helpful in doing that is to go back into that agreement and build in some exemptions for higher minimums so that you help our smaller builders and an infill exception so that cities could designate infill areas inside their city limits where they would like to promote infill. And that maybe in the south part of the county where you have more activity, that you look at restructuring your concurrency service areas a little bit so that it might bring developers in some instances to the table sooner. So just something to think about, that I think the cities I think we can keep them on board, but we've got to make them feel, and we've got to make them partners in this whole discussion. And when a developer comes in and there is a concurrency issue, I think including them at the very beginning in that discussion will go a long way to keeping the cities in the concurrency agreement. So they feel that they're actually offering up potential solutions when you hit that wall and you hit capacity that you've got to come up with, new bricks and mortar. So, all right, I'm done.
Okay, Ms. Donovan has the floor.
Yes, ma'am. I love this warm and fuzzy meeting we're having here, but we're not getting to the end result, which is Mr. Cadwell has already said. And I think we need to, the board needs to get, and we're going to have a special meeting next week, I understand that. I had originally, back in our workshops, and I'm sure you read the minutes, I had said 50%. I will go down to 25% just to get this thing moving countywide so that we can start something. And we don't end up, because you do have a deadline Tuesday, we don't end up going back to the 9,000. I'm waiting until January to do that. So this gets us going and gets us started, and that's going to be my recommendation. We're meeting on Monday. All right.
Anybody else? All right, we're going to hear from the public at this point. Do you want to?
At this time.
All right, that's Sherry Walkins. And then after Sherry, Vance Jotham, and then Michael Rich, I believe, from Lady Lake.
Sherry Walton.
3 minutes.
Okay, I'll quick. This sounds like the same horse as being beaten to death. The last 20 years, I've been asleep and I woke up and here we are back at the same thing. My concern is if we have another crunch in the home industry, if money isn't paid up front, foreclosures is this money that will be lost and will then be passed on to the taxpayers. I don't have a problem paying my fair share of taxes, but I'm not going to pay builder impact fees. They're the ones that are putting the impact. I'm tired of hearing builders cry. Wasn't aware of the fact that they hadn't even been paying. Subdivision by me, the reserve at Mineola has gone from $130,000 to $160,000 in the last 2 years. 2 subdivisions out off of the new connector road are sold out in 2 years. So growth is coming. It's here. They're planning. You've got a turnpike extension coming in. They're going to be there. You want to help ease your burden in the county? Put some manufacturing in here instead of just homes. We have got to quit depending upon the home builders to supply our growth.
And, Regency Road is in the south end, because you have Disney, a major employer, and you have Orlando, that's easy to get there. If you don't have it up here, maybe Marion County people are going to Marion, I don't know. But I don't think that any of this burden should ever be passed back on to taxpayers. That's where my biggest increase in my mortgage has gone, between what taxes are and runaway homeowners insurance. That's what's about to force me out of my home, are those two things. And taxes have been pretty reasonable. Thank you.
Thank you, Sharon. And then Van, your comments?
It's Joseph, right, at FiscalRangers.com. And first of all, I'd like to also support the viewpoint of people who have existing properties, because if you don't have impact fees, then that means that the alternative is to hike property taxes or other taxes, and which some people want to spread it out to everybody so that the new homes don't have that, incur that impact fee. And my view is that the impact fees are justified because the new construction is the one creating the need for infrastructure, whether it's roads or schools. I moved here from California, and back there they had equivalent of what you're talking about, which is assessments. It's called the Mellow Roofs Bill. I looked it up today on the internet. It's still there. You can find it in Wikipedia. It was established in 1982 as a way to get around their version of Save Our Homes. It's called Proposition 13, to put a cap on home taxes like you have here. And I was there when every time you have a dip in the economy, nobody could sell those homes, because the taxes that were slapped on it through Mellow Roofs were in addition to the property values, where a lot of homes did not have that, and so people would shift over to buy those other homes. And Mellow Roofs homes would drop like a stone. I mean, there were people going bankrupt because they couldn't sell it and so forth. So I think you really need to research that if you're going to go with any kind of assessment thing where you're tacking taxes onto the property afterwards. Let's see, the presentation that you had on the school the revenue needs, or the revenues, they talked about how they've fallen off, and then they talked about the capital plan. They didn't really cover, they have in other meetings, but they didn't do it here, was to justify how they got the $980 million or so, as far as where's the growth coming from and which year is it going to impact it. And coming from the corporate world, you always would expect that they've got to have some sound, justified numbers for that. And I think they have them, but I don't think they were discussed. Yeah, Harry has told me that he has them, and I've probably seen them more than once at board meetings, but I just want to point that out.
We're there.
Pardon?
We don't have the beeper today, but we're there.
Oh, are you? Okay. Well, just the one thing I might suggest is that the home builders are the ones that are saying let's not raise. Ask them to help you with lobbying to try and get some of the changes you've talked about at the state level, because that may happen. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, Michael.
So always want to be in charge of that.
My name is Michael Rich. I'm the president of Hog Hill Country Club. I'm going to give you a picture of what the home building industry looks like. This is according to your records. There were 942 permits in 2012. You have to go back all the way to 1982 to see things that bad. Where we are today, the first 6 months of the year, there's been 491 permits. Trying to make this big enough so everybody can see it. The experts, economists tell us that they expect a 13% drop in the second half of this year. But we haven't figured out who's an expert yet, because everybody makes a financial prediction today every day. I can tell you housing starts were down 13.4% 13.4% in August. And I have a copy of all these charts for most of you guys here.
Yeah, next them out, please.
Yeah, I only made 7 copies, unfortunately, and not people can see. I can tell you about macroeconomics. I've been a builder for 38 years. Interest rates have gone up, our sales have stopped. We've had 7 sales this year. We have not had a sale since the interest rates went up in June. Pre-owned homes, I think, is the key to the solution to your problem. There's been 4,600 pre-owned homes sold in Lake County this year. There are over 1,000 pre-owned homes pending. I know the realtors don't want to hear this, but I also happen to be a realtor and a real estate broker. Some sort of capital contribution program where somebody moving into a home, whether they want to call it a transfer fee or capital contribution, might work. And just to tell you a couple of things, if this is a recovery, nothing in life goes straight up, nothing in life goes straight down. If this is a recovery, what will do in the first inning? It's not going to go straight up. Most recoveries, if you look at the stock market and other economic factors, there's always a little W where it comes back and hits the bottom and then it goes back up again. My major concern is that Florida has shown a negative migration the past 3 years. We got more people moving out of the state than we have people moving into the state. Unemployment in Lake County is 7.6% in July. That's higher than all the other counties in Central Florida. The Central Florida workplace, which encompasses the 5 counties, was 6.9%. Florida was 7.1%. National average was 7.4%. And Lake County, 7.6%. Builders create jobs. Building houses creates jobs. Okay? We need to create jobs. We certainly don't need to put our thumbs down and kind of ruin a little bit of an uptake we've had in the home building industry. Currently, we have 140 developed lots in Harbor Hill. I'm not developing any lots for a very long time. Any of my children will develop lots. Okay? We paid $181,000 in real estate taxes on those lots last year. All I ask you guys to do is kind of think, about some sort of capital contribution where you've got this huge shadow industry that is buying up foreclosures. You've got companies like Blackstone out of California that have purchased 5,000 homes in Florida. They're renting them out. They should be contributing towards this process. I don't want to pay any more real estate taxes on the lots I own or the property I own. I don't want to pay $9,000 or $10,000 impact. I'd be willing to pay $1,500, $2,000.
Well, maybe you can then help us bring the realtors and the home builders together to push forward.
They got much better lobbying than we do.
Well, you need to bring those 2 groups together if we're ever going to get a doc stamp to take care of these capital needs. So appreciate all of the great information. It's very good. Okay.
All right. I think you've done a great job. All together, board members, you've been terrific in your stance for quality education in Lake County and the housing of students. Superintendent and her staff did a great job. I want to thank the home builders that are in the audience for coming. I want to thank those that are here because you're just concerned about your home. Thank you very much for speaking. This comes down to a very personal level. It is not only the future, but it's what's hitting your pocketbook today. And thank you very much.
All right. Thanks. And Dr. Howard?
And I'll finish with my comments. The gentleman mentioned 420. Our stats say it's 826 homes we built in the first 6 months this year. That's 252. That's a third of the school. This isn't going down. We've seen the increases down there. You know, I know that the 25% has been mentioned. you know, I can go to the 25%, it doesn't solve our needs. What I would ask though is that there's an automatic increase unless we can find something else to offset this. And I think there needs to be teeth in this, make sure all of our feet are held to the flames to get this done and get through it. And this is a tough time to do it. The exciting political season is getting ready to come up, and kicking this down for another year while it may be convenient is not going to fix the issue that we have. The fact of the matter is that we are growing, and there are some financial problems that we have to face. Thank you.
Okay, real quick, I want to thank everyone for us being able to get together. This is a time when, as I've spoken around the county, people don't understand why government doesn't work. And this is the first step towards it working, where we sit down and have a keen understanding, we're hearing the same information at the same time. So I'm very grateful for that.